Sometimes, as we go through life as human beings, things are synchronous. Synchronicity is, in short, the physical manifestation of an unconscious process that you were thinking about previously, and then it just appears in front of you in your life. It is a reflection of the mind externalized. So, my most recent video, the What Do AI, Racism, and Confessions Have in Common, where I compare and contrast the inherent contradictions in a couple different worldviews, those worldviews being Christianity, sort of Orthodox Christianity, Industrial Revolution era rationalism, logical positivism, etc., and the woke postmodern crap that is going on right now. While I was making that video, or shortly thereafter, I was also involved in a debate with somebody defending Sam Harris. Now, Sam Harris, for the people who live under a rock, is a public intellectual who has a lot of really stupid hot takes, and he rose to prominence as an atheist preacher, and a self-diagnosed rationalist and clear thinker, and he recently got a lot of flack for going on the Trigonometry podcast and saying about the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was a big story in the US, and I quote, "Even if Hunter Biden had dead children in his basement, it wouldn't matter. There was a left-wing conspiracy to keep Donald Trump out of office. They used media subversion. That's fine. I don't care. It was worth it." So let that sink in. This is a man who has made his living as a rationalist, as a defender of Western values, even going so far as to risk being politically incorrect and bashing on Islam, which is fine in my book, because Islam is absolutely not a religion of peace. He nailed that one right on the head. But see, this is what happens when you have consequentialist ethics. But before I go into that, I want to finish my story about how this was synchronous, right? So Sam Harris is a rationalist, and what did I say in my video? I said that that rationalism is inherently contradictory because we're all talking monkeys who have a problem with rationality, and that we're not supposed to be rational. We're not supposed to believe in free will. And who is Sam Harris? He's the public face of the rationalist religion. He is a person who tried to create his own moral system called The Moral Landscape that he wrote down in a book. He has an entire book trying to debunk free will with facts and logic, which is kind of ironic if you think about it, because it was his free will that gave him the inclination to write that book. Of course, he would argue differently. So this guy is like the epitome of rationalism, right? All the problems and some of the good sides, you know. And I was talking with this guy who was defending him about what he said on the Trigonometry podcast, which is in blatant. It's blatantly it's totalitarian, is what it really is. It's like we don't trust human beings enough, despite being human beings. But those other human beings, those more human beings, we don't trust them to make their own decisions given access to free information and free speech. So I'm totally in favor of suppressing free speech in favor of the greater good. So that's consequentialist ethics. That's the flaw of rationalism. The flaw of rationalism is tyranny. It's the idea that you can control everything, that you can't trust people because they're irrational, but you're rational, and you're a talking monkey, so that poses some problems. And this guy was going on defending Sam Harris, and he was talking crap about Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson's trying to solve the postmodern problem in good faith, and good for him, because that problem needs to be solved so we can get out of the pale blue dot that we're on. Not literally, metaphorically. And what did this guy finally just admit to? After probably 10 back and forths, he admitted to being a communist. The belief system that this man literally said saving money is theft, billionaires steal. It's like straight out of a Soviet propaganda textbook where you've got like the fat Monopoly Man cartoon, who's also has a pig's tail for some rational reason, and he's like holding a dollar bill, and all these like little like tiny monkeys are like jumping after the bill, and those monkeys are supposed to represent poor people. And then you've got like this strapping young working man who's got a shovel and a hammer and sickle on his back, and then you've got this like fat greedy capitalist pig who looks like the fucking Monopoly guy ate a hamburger. And none of this is rational. This guy clearly does not know what he's talking about. He doesn't understand that socialism and communism have killed more people than Nazism. And then, of course, he doubled back, and despite using communist propagandistic language, he went back and said something to the effect of, like, "Oh, well, you know, I just want a little bit of, just want some taxes to be redistributed." Yeah, that's how it starts, right? First, you get rid of the idea that marriage is between a man and a woman, and the second thing you do, you get rid of gender, and then the third thing, you've got people fucking their dogs. And you say, oh, that's a slippery slope fallacy. It's like our entire moral structure is at the bottom of a fucking fat slippery slope. And we got there one rational step at a time. So that was my synchronicity for the night. I thought it was too funny to not share that this person who is defending Sam Harris and criticizing Jordan Peterson for being too irrational and meaningless and all this stuff just came out as like a diehard communist. By the way, despite having a real confusion about what the difference between male and female is, this person was very clear on their definition of marriage, which is marriage is a bond between two loving people. And I say, why people? Why not start fucking a horse? You know? And who said, like, and not to mention, his view of marriage as a bond between two loving people is absurd, because under his definition of marriage, I could have sex with my 10-year-old sister. It doesn't make any sense. Like, rationalism is a flawed experiment. If there's one thing that I hope that you take from this relatively frustrating encounter, it's that rationalism is over. It's dead. And what I predict is, in the same way that, so when you look at the IQ curves of religious believers and atheists, what you find is that up until the Industrial Revolution, the IQ curve for like religious people is fairly normal, because that's all that was around. And then as soon as something interesting happens, you can do this gradated by country. When you get to about 20% of the population in any given country being atheist, and the more intelligent people tend to adopt atheism first because they're more sensitive to new ideas, what happens is the entire country's IQ curve for atheists shifts upward about 10 points. So what does this mean? People like to look at that data and say, oh, this means atheists are smarter. No. What it means is that marginally intelligent people sniff the air around them, pick up socially accepted ideas, and copy it verbatim. All it means is that slightly smarter than average people, not geniuses, but like midwits, basically, slightly smarter than average people, are they adopt new views for they adopt novel and interesting concepts for social credit score. We see this with the wave of trans Hollywood kids. It's like, I think there's this female actor who has about 25 or not 25, who has about like 5 trans kids. Like, what are the odds of that? Gender dysphoria used to be only in like a fraction of a percent of men. And most of them got over it with therapy, and they just decided they were gay or decided they were straight. But now it's like, this lady has 5 trans kids? That's so interesting. How progressive of her. How rational of her. So, anyway, like I said, if you want to understand the point of this video, you have to understand rationalism is over. It's done. It died when gender studies theory, when the first gender studies paper was published by the pedophiles John Money and Kinsey, Alfred Kinsey. Rationalism died. Probably died with Nietzsche, to be honest, when he said that truth serves life. But Sam Harris's truth doesn't serve life. Sam Harris's truth serves the state. And that should be known. And my point about the IQs of atheists and religious people, here's a problem, right? Religious people right now in the United States tend to, not saying all religious people are stupid, but if you take the average IQ of religious people, it's about like 95, whereas the average IQ of secular folks is 105. And I told you that you can measure that that's mostly as a function of atheism being the popular intellectual belief as opposed to Christianity. But I think as atheism and secularism exposes itself for the absurdity that it is, you're going to see the average IQ of atheists start to drop. And you can already see that with the memes of like Redditors and soy boys and all this stuff. The intellectual movement is seeing the flaws in a secular worldview and is moving towards a sort of neo-Christian, neo-Platonic, maybe even Hermetic understanding of morality and philosophy and perception, and is moving away from the era of Sam Harris and maybe not Dawkins. Dawkins is actually, I mean, he's old, but he's also. I honestly think Dawkins is the most intelligent of the 4 horsemen of the atheistic apocalypse. Sam Harris, Dawkins, Dennett, and Hitchens. But the era of Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett, that's over. And as with religious people, how the only people who are still religious in a traditional classical sense, not like a psychoanalytic, biblical interpretation, symbolic world, Jonathan Pageau, Jordan Peterson sense, the average IQ of atheists is going to drop. And I think you're starting to see that happen now, where you get people making incoherent statements about gender, incoherent statements about sex, incoherent statements about race. You know, we already know that half the population has bachelor's degrees in the United States. So, you know, you can decide for yourself what that says about the average IQ of a bachelor's degree holder in the United States, a bachelor's of science or arts holder in the United States. Pretty flat supply and demand curve. But we're definitely going to see the same thing with atheistic beliefs starting to decline in people as the intelligent ones adopt new ideas first. And hopefully when 20% of people get onto the symbolic and phenomenological religious landscape of philosophy that got started in the late 1800s with Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, and is now moving into the modern era with people like Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Pageau and even Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh to some extent, although they're more political. We're going to see, hopefully, when 20% of the people cross that threshold, we're going to see a resistance from the orthodox, liberal, secular, humanist establishment, which I think we're already starting to see. And we're seeing the book burnings take place on places like Twitter. And then you're going to see the average IQ of the atheist drop to probably about 95. So have fun with that. Have fun, enjoy watching the next 50 years play out. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, at least in that regard.